There's a city mentioned in ancient texts of Tibet, India, China, and Mongolia. A city that doesn't appear on any map. A place even NASA satellites can't locate. And yet, in 1938, Adolf Hitler sent an elite SS team into Tibet just to find it. They believed it held the secrets of immortality and the power to reshape the world. Some say they found nothing. Others say they found too much. But this obsession didn't start with the Nazis. Russian mystics believe Shambhala lays beneath the Altai Mountains. Chinese monks claim to have seen its gates. British Raj sent spies into the Himalayas. And even the CIA, after defeating the Nazis, kept classified files marked Shambhala Watchlist. Why were the world's most powerful empires chasing a city that officially doesn't exist? Legends say it lies in the hidden valleys between Tibet and Mongolia, a kingdom of wisdom and peace, where sickness doesn't exist, where machines run without fuel, where people glow with light and never grow old. And here's the twist. You can't just walk in. The texts say it only appears to those who are ready, to the ones who have mastered themselves. Even today, entire region around Tibet remains blurred on Google Earth. Locals whisper about strange lights in the sky, footsteps in the snow with no bodies behind, and voices chanting in forgotten tongues, carried only by the wind. In the Kalachakra Tantra, the crown jewel of Vajrayana Buddhism, Shambhala is described in astonishing detail. A real kingdom hidden beneath snowy peaks ruled by enlightened kings. But the deeper you go, the more the mystery deepens. In 1968, an American scientist created a perfect society for rats. Unlimited food, no disease, no predators. But what happened next shocked the scientific world and made the elites chase Shambhala harder than ever. So in this video, we are going to trace Shambhala through ancient scriptures, global legends, and secret expeditions with shocking scientific experiment that may explain why paradise never lasts. Shambhala is described in the Kalachakra Tantra, a land ruled by 96 million followers of the Dharma, a kingdom hidden beyond the Himalayas, led by a line of 32 kings, each one a dharmic ruler, each preparing for one final war. It begins with the king Suchandra, who received the Kalachakra teachings directly from the historical Buddha, Shakyamuni, not in India, but in Shambhala itself. Each ruler after him preserved these teachings in secrets until the 25th king, Rudra Chakrin, who is yet to arrive. According to Tantra, Rudra Chakrin will emerge when the world descends into a dharma, when truth collapses, morality fades, and false doctrines rule. And when that time comes, Shambhala will no longer stay hidden. It will go to war, but not for land, not for gold. It will wage war to restore dharma. And Rudra Chakrin will defeat the forces of darkness, not just with weapons, but with enlightened knowledge. And this prophecy isn't vague. It names regions, it describes events, and it says the army of Shambhala will rise in the distant future, around 5,000 years after the Buddha's death. And here's the thing, the most Tibetan texts place the Buddha's demise around 500 BC, which means the Kalki of Shambhala is not due until the future, thousands of years from now. And that's where it starts aligning with Hindu text. Because in Hinduism too, a final future king is prophesied, one who will rise when Kali Yuga hits rock bottom. His name, Kalki, the 10th avatar of Lord Vishnu, born in a time of chaos, riding a white horse, swinging a blazing sword to destroy a dharma. And here's what's fascinating. Both traditions say the final king will come when time itself collapses, when the cycles of the yuga or the wheel of time reach a breaking point. In Buddhism, this is Kalachakra, literally time wheel, the same word used in Hindu cosmology. Kalachakra, the idea is identical, that time is not linear. It moves in repeating cycles, yugas, kalpas, eons. And at the end of each cycle, dharma is reborn, only through a divine intervention. And in both cases, that intervention comes from the hidden land, a realm protected from moral decay, a kingdom that exists outside our perception until the moment of reckoning arrives. Some Hindu texts say that Kalki will rise itself in Shambhala. Others say he will rise in a village named Shambhala in modern day India. But here's the point, the location is debated, but the outcome is not. Both traditions say when humanity forgets its purpose, when machines overpower man, when dharma disappears from the earth, a final king will rise. And the blueprint, whether we call it Shambhala or not, is the same. An ancient kingdom, divine warrior, a battle not for conquest, but for cosmic balance. But you might be wondering, why did so many superpowers believe in Indian texts when they publicly dismissed them as mythology? The answer is simple, because India wasn't the only one telling this story. Across continents and cultures that never had contact with each other, or that's what we say, the same vision reappears. A hidden land of wisdom, a kingdom of light, a place inaccessible to the unworthy, but real to those who are prepared. Take Mount Shasta in North America. Native American tribes have long revered it as a sacred mountain, home not to the animals or trees, but to luminous beings who live inside it. Modern theosophists call them Lemurians, survivors of an ancient lost continent who went underground to preserve their knowledge. A hidden race, a sacred mountain, a portal visible only to the ready. It's not just a legend, its resemblance to Shambhala is uncannily perfect. And if you haven't seen my Mount Shasta episode, watch that one just after this. Now come back to the east, towards the frozen heights of Mount Kailash. No human has ever summited it, not due to physical difficulty, but out of reverence. Every culture surrounding Kailash, like Hinduism, Buddhist, Bon, Jain, believe it's not just a mountain, but the axis mundi, the cosmic spine where heavens meet earth. Some texts even place Shambhala in its shadows or directly beneath it. The idea isn't vague, it's spiritually and geographically exact. You'll find a lot on this in my detailed video on Mount Kailash documentary. Further west, Mesopotamia speaks of Dilmun, a land where no one falls sick, no one grows old, no lion killed. They called it the land of living, and more importantly, the gateway to Meluha. Today, most scholars agree that Meluha was ancient India. In a sense, Dilmun was Shambhala with another name, a utopia at the edge of known civilization. I've packed all of this in my Dilmun episode. Now to Greece. The ancient Greek wrote of Hyperborea, a paradise beyond the north wind, where people lived 1,000 years, untouched by disease or war, guided by Apollo himself, the god of light. Herodotus placed this land somewhere beyond the Himalayas. It's not a stretch to see the overlap. In China, Taoist scriptures speak of the Kulin Mountains, a mythical paradise ruled by the Queen Mother of the West. These mountains were said to house rivers of jade, trees that granted immortality, and sages who defied death. You could only enter if your inner energy was aligned. That's almost word for word how Tibetan texts describe access to Shambhala. The Celts had Avalon, an island of healing and eternal youth. Time moved differently there. Mortals could only enter by fate. It was ruled by priestess, hidden from human eye. Even in West Africa, the Dogon tribe of Mali tells the story of beings from Sirius B, an invisible star to the naked eye until telescopes that it existed. These beings brought geometry, language, and dharma like laws. They came from the watery realm, just like the Tibetan term Nagawang Long Talk, a realm of unseen wind and speech. Another resemblance. So what are we really looking at? Shambhala isn't a lone prophecy. It's a recurring pattern, a code repeated across time, space, and languages. Different names, different geographies, same geometry, a kingdom of light hidden from unworthy, guided by inner purity and always waiting for a word on the brink to return. But maybe you're still skeptical. Maybe you still think that every civilization was spinning the same myth. It is just a coincidence. And that's fair, because that's exactly what modern gatekeepers want you to believe. That it's all symbolic, all spiritual, nothing real. But then explain this. Why did the British Empire, Nazi Germany, Soviet Russia, and the CIA, all known for pragmatism and power, spent years, money, and manpower chasing something that publicly was dismissed as fiction. Because Shambhala doesn't live in legend, it lives on maps. One of the most respected Tibetan scholar, Desai Sangye Gyatso, wrote in the 17th century that Shambhala was a physical kingdom, shaped like a lotus and surrounded by snow-covered peaks. He even gave coordinates between 36° and 48° north latitude. That's not poetry. That's Mongolia, Western China, and the Altai mountain belt, a region still riddled with unexplained magnetic anomalies, ancient ruins, and military no-fly zones even today. The Kalachakra Tantra, which forms the philosophical core of the Tibetan Vajrayana Buddhism, gives detailed geographical description. Hidden valleys, crystalline rivers, a central palace city named Kalpa, and a lotus-shaped geography with 8 regions, each protected by a gate. So when early explorers tried to match this with real terrain, their compass kept pointing towards one zone, the high-altitude Altai region. In the 1920s, Russian mystic and painter Nicholas Roerich led a government-backed expedition through the Gobi Desert and the Altai Mountains, funded secretly by Soviet, British, and Americans. His mission was publicly described as a cultural research. But Roerich's personal letters revealed much later they show something else. His Tibetan guides believed he was close to Shambhala. His maps aligned shockingly well with ancient Tibetan scrolls. He reported mysterious weather events, vanishing valleys, and moments of unreal silence that locals treated with reverence. Even today, certain parts of the region remains blurred or pixelated on Google Earth, not because of snow or cloud cover, but because those areas are deliberately censored. Reports from local shepherds and trekkers speak of lights in the sky, shadows with no source, and chants heard from valley where no settlement exists. So here's the twist. Shambhala may not just be hidden. It may be protected, not by magic, but by geopolitics. And the deeper you go, the more it becomes clear that this was not just spiritual speculation. It was a treasure hunt with stakes so high that entire regimes got involved. Because what if someone already found it? That's what we uncover next in the story of Nazi occult expedition, CIA black files, and a global scramble to locate a kingdom that was never supposed to be real. In 1938, under direct orders from Heinrich Himmler, a Nazi SS unit arrived in Tibet. On paper, it was a zoological expedition. But the real mission was far stranger. The Ahnenerbe, Hitler's occult wing, believed Shambhala held the key to ancient Aryan wisdom, the power of real energy, and possibly even a portal to Agartha, the inner earth. Led by Ernest Schaffer, the team studied Tibetan texts, took skull measurements of local, and hunted for ancient artifacts. What they found is still classified. But after the war, several documents were seized, including references to hidden valley of the Dharma king. The Nazis believed it was real, and that someone had hidden it on purpose. But they weren't the first. During the British Raj, explorers like Sir Francis Younghusband and Captain Frederick Bailey were sent deep into the Himalayas. Their mission had dual purpose: map uncharted passes and verify reports of a lost kingdom nestled between Tibet and Mongolia. British intelligence files from 1910 to 1930 mentioned visions of cities behind cloud walls and monks refusing passage into forbidden valleys. These weren't just travelers' tales. These were flagged as strategic unknowns. Decades later, in the Cold War era, the Americans picked up where the Nazis left off. In declassified CIA archives, we find strange entries. Tibet marked as zone of paranormal interest. Reports of isolated monasteries with enormous electromagnetic reading. A program known by the codename Shambhala Watchlist. It was never acknowledged, but insiders say several missions were launched under the guise of high-altitude surveillance. The true target? Not troops movement, but something beneath the ice. From local whispers of the strange light to classified files and vanishing expedition, the pattern becomes clear. Every path still points to Shambhala. So the question isn't, was Shambhala ever real? The question is, did someone already find it and then erase the trail behind them? Because if paradise was discovered, the world was never meant to know. And maybe Shambhala is just one name in a chain of forgotten utopias. Because modern science tried to build one and failed. In 1968, American scientist John Calhoun created Universe 25, a rat utopia with unlimited food, water, and shelter. No predators, no disease. At first, the colony thrived, but then the crack appeared. Mothers abandoned their young. Males stopped defending their territory. Some turned violent, others withdrew completely. Within a few generations, the entire population collapsed. Calhoun called it behavioral sink, a warning that when comfort replaces struggle, societies rot from within. Maybe that's why every legend of paradise, from Shambhala to Hyperborea, ends in disappearance. Not because it never existed, but because paradise itself is unsustainable. Because there's another, a land east of Sumer called Dinman, a place where no sickness spread, no one grows old, and no predators kill. The Sumerian called it the land of the living. They mapped it, they named it, they traded with it, and most importantly, they linked it to ancient India. But just like Shambhala, Dinman vanished until it was rediscovered and buried again. And honestly, this is the only utopia mentioned in ancient myths that we have been able to discover and date with archaeological material. And to find out why it disappeared and why it was buried again and why we don't have much information about Dinman, watch my Dinman documentary next. Because the pattern, it doesn't lie, and the world has erased paradise before. Well, this is it from my side. This is Harry signing off. Stay curious.